Illuminati Unmasked by Giovanni Cerrucci. Audiobook narrated by John Paul Harkins. Chapter 2. The Manchurian Messiah of Mystery. The man in charge on September 11th, 2012 was Barack Hussein Obama. Obama has a background obscured in mystery and intrigue. He is openly hostile to America and what made her great, and he has steered her into almost unavoidable destruction. While on the campaign trail in Columbia, Missouri on October 30th, 2008, Obama proclaimed, "We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States." But he wasn't going to start from scratch. He was building on the work of previous administrations across both of America's perennial political parties. What he did do was take that agenda and put it into overdrive. In December of 2013, a press release told Americans that the Affordable Health Care Act, aka Obamacare, was working flawlessly, and Obama himself had signed himself up for the Bronze Plan. This would later turn out to be untrue. In a short, unrepeated story, Fox News' Ed Henry stated that Obama hadn't enrolled himself per se. His staff did it for him. However, healthcare.gov was unable to identify who he was.
Somebody who's not waiting in line to enroll is the President of the United States. We learned today from the White House, initially they said he enrolled this past weekend and signed up for what they called a bronze plan, paying about $400 a month in premiums. But then they came back to us and said, well, wait, he didn't actually enroll. They said his staff did it, and that's because of his unique circumstance, obviously as commander-in-chief, that his personal information is not in various government databases, so healthcare.gov could not actually verify his identity, oddly enough. So he had to do it in person this weekend, but he was in Hawaii, not in Washington, so he was signing up for the D.C. exchange, so his staff did it. So they say, look, this was a symbolic gesture to get behind it, but the bottom line here is the president liked his plan, and he'll get to keep his plan, which is not exactly the exchange, period.
Barack Obama has at least 2 aliases and perhaps more. The first alias is one most of us have heard, Barry Soetoro. This name derives from Stanley Ann Dunham's remarriage to Indonesian citizen Lolo Soetoro. Dunham is Obama's legal mother, and she is listed as having died in 1995 of uterine cancer. We will examine the Dunham family's CIA roots in a later chapter, but it is instructive to notice that a man who would name his daughter after himself has questionable motives. It has been corroborated and confirmed that the elder Dunham was the authority that gave Barack Obama to pornographer and pedophile radical black communist Frank Marshall Davis for a black influence. Davis may well have been Obama's biological father as well as sexual abuser. Stanley Ann Dunham is said to have died just 4 months after the release of Obama's autobiography, Dreams from My Father. The timing of these key events seemed to be a type of unveiling before his meteoric rise. It makes the cremation of Dunham's body somewhat of a concern. She died in November 1995 as Mr. Obama was starting his first campaign for public office. After a memorial service at the University of Hawaii, one friend said a small group of friends drove to the South Shore in Oahu. With the wind whipping the waves onto the rocks, Mr. Obama and Miss Soetoro Ng placed their mother's ashes in the Pacific, sending them off in the direction of Indonesia. Janie Scott, New York Times. As Obama took over the White House in 2008, his grandmother died. She too would be cremated and her ashes scattered over her daughters. With prophetic intuition, Obama would pen an autobiography while he was nothing more than a community organizer for the left-wing activist group Acorn in Chicago. Author and journalist Jack Cashill would stun his readers by making the well-researched claim that domestic terrorist William Ayers secretly wrote Obama's autobiography. Ayers himself would say as much more than once. Obama's half-brother, Ndesanjo, would draw fire for stating several of the family claims in the book were inaccurate. It was almost as if a past was being fabricated for Obama by a powerful entity behind him. It is the same entity that has the ability to inundate American education with radical leftists, communists, and terrorists, and that is exactly where William Ayers ended up, teaching America's impressionable youth. William Ayers, distinguished professor of education and senior university scholar at the University of Illinois at Chicago, retired, member of the executive committee of the Faculty Senate, and founder of both the Small Schools Workshop and the Center for Youth and Society, taught courses in interpretive and qualitative research, oral history, creative nonfiction, urban school change, and teaching, and the modern predicament. BillAyers.org. Barry Soetoro. Investigative reporter Aaron Klein noted about Obama's use of the name Barry Soetoro. A 2007 Associated Press photograph taken by Tatan Siaflana, an Indonesian AP reporter and photographer, surfaced last week on the daylife.com photographic website, showing an image of Obama's registration card at Indonesia's Franciscus Assisi School, a Catholic institution. In the picture, Obama is registered under the name Barry Soetoro by his stepfather, Lolo Soetoro. The school card lists Barry Soetoro as an Indonesian citizen born on August 4, 1961 in Honolulu, Hawaii. His religion is listed as Muslim. Klein. In this admonition, we begin to see exactly who the power is behind Barack Hussein Obama and his ongoing agenda to destroy America from within. It is an ancient hatred that began in mankind's first rebellion against God in Babylon. It was scattered at Babel, but reconstituted in Egypt, and was spread by Greece into Rome, where it metamorphosized into something far more powerful than just a single empire. It has become the heart and brains of a worldwide machine that wields the banks of London, the slave labor of Beijing, and the military might of Washington, D.C. At its center is an amalgamation of all esoteric, Gnostic, mystical arts, paganism, with the trappings of Christianity, and it wears the robes of Christ's vicar on earth, the Roman Catholic Pope. The enforcement arm of this machine is Satan's special forces, the Society of Jesus, more commonly known as the Jesuits. Those who think Barack Obama is just a communist or just an Islamic agent of the Muslim Brotherhood or of Saudi Arabia have no answer to the question, where are all the judges, generals, and Republican politicians? How does Obama's agenda not have a single, powerful public enemy? The man of many names. Barack Obama's second known alias stems from his Social Security number. In an effort to find out why Obama's SSN traces back to a state he's never lived in, Jack Cashill contacted registered paralegal Susan Daniels, and she told him something startling. Barack Obama has been using a Social Security number issued in Connecticut between 1977 and 1979, a state in which he never lived or even visited at that time in his life. All I can say, says Daniels of 042684425, is that it's phony, and Obama has been using it, with it first appearing on his Selective Service document in 1980. Cashill. The name associated with this Social Security number isn't Barack Obama or Barry Soetoro, but Harrison J. Bonnell. Obama's education is just as mysterious. One Philadelphia schoolteacher noted, "While preparing a research assignment on our country's first African-American president, I was startled to find much of Barack Obama's records are missing or sealed from the public." President Obama attended Punahou School in Honolulu, one of Hawaii's top private institutions. However, Obama has refused to release his high school transcripts and SAT scores to the public, despite numerous requests by citizens and journalists. Obama's financial records at the Punahou School and Occidental College have not been released. In 1981, at age 20, Obama transferred from Occidental College to Columbia University. His transcripts at Columbia also remain sealed. His thesis on Soviet nuclear disarmament also remains unavailable. Obama's Harvard Law School records are sealed. So are his LSAT scores. Obama lectured at the University of Chicago Law School from 1992 until 2004. Reporters have been unable to find any scholarly articles authored by him. It is customary for presidents running for office to disclose their medical records. Obama's medical records have yet to be released. Obama's fully visible passport has not been released. In 2010, the White House posted a partially blurred version on their website, Chalk Talk. Chelsea Schilling of WorldNet Daily corroborates the teacher's conundrum and says the missing, lost, sealed records go back even further to Obama's kindergarten class. A man who had illegal access to Obama's passport was later found dead. Not surprisingly, local law enforcement was tight-lipped about the details. Illegal access to a document that is evidence of illegal activities is, in actuality, legal. A key witness in a federal probe into passport information stolen from the State Department was fatally shot in front of a district church, the Metropolitan Police Department said yesterday. Lieutenant Quarles Harris Jr., 24, who had been cooperating with federal investigators, was found late Thursday night, slumped dead inside a car in front of the Judah House Praise Baptist Church in Northeast, said Commander Michael Anzalo, head of the department's Criminal Investigation Division. The Washington Times reported April 5th that contractors for the State Department had improperly accessed passport information for presidential candidates, Senators Hillary Rodham Clinton, Barack Obama, and John McCain, which resulted in a series of firings that reached into the agency's top ranks, the Washington Times Hillary Rodham Clinton and John McCain are key figures in the Jesuit CIA menagerie. Wikipedia describes Wayne Allen Root as an American politician, entrepreneur, television and radio personality, TV producer, political commentator, and national best-selling author. Root noted about his supposed Columbia University classmate, "I called Obama the ghost of Columbia University. I pointed out, as I've said in the media for many years now, that Obama may have registered at Columbia, may have graduated from Columbia, but he was rarely, if ever, seen for the 2 years in between. It's a strange, mysterious, and frightening story. Is he the real-life Manchurian candidate? What explains Obama having just enough skeletal proof that he was there, one photo, one roommate, one professor, one friend, but never seen in a class, never on anyone's radar screen, almost invisible, a total 2-year blackout? It's like a story straight out of a novel about the CIA or KGB. He graduated Columbia, but it's almost as if he never went there."
There is a lot of concern about Barack Hussein Obama's birth certificate, his school records, and a lot of things are not known by him or about him. And this is the first time I've ever seen a president get away with this. I have with me Wayne Allen Root, 2008 Libertarian vice presidential nominee and best-selling author of 7 books. He is also a former classmate of Obama's at Columbia University. And Wayne want to know, why won't Obama unseal his college records? Why is he hiding so much? And I've seen Wayne on TV and different other programs. And Wayne, it's an honor to have you on this morning. Good morning, sir.
Hey, Jesse, how are you? You left out one really good title
Okay.
that everyone should know, and that is that I was the Libertarian Party vice presidential nominee in 2008. So I'm not just Barack Obama's classmate from Columbia University in '83. I ran against him on every ballot in the country 4 years ago. I was the vice presidential running mate of Bob Barr, who ran for president of the United States on the Libertarian ticket.
Wayne, I read that you graduated from Columbia the same year as Obama back in 1983, and you were well connected, but you or your friends from Columbia never met or saw Obama. How is that possible?
Yeah, it's a strange story. It's a mystery. It's a little scary to me. I don't know what it really means, but it can't be good. You know, it's funny because people think I have an agenda. My agenda, of course, is I am a real fiscal conservative and a capitalist, and I think Obama's killing our economy.
Yeah.
And so I think he's got to go. But I answer the question completely honestly. I'll take a lie detector test tomorrow. I'm just answering it as it's asked. Everyone says to me, "Did you see him?" And my answer is no. Never saw my classmate, never heard of him, never met him. Not the slightest recollection of anyone that looked like him or named Barack Obama or Barry Zotero. Nothing. And when I ask my fellow classmates, nothing. No one ever met him, and they're all, as you might imagine, extremely ultra-liberal. They're big Democrats who support him, almost everyone I went to Columbia with. So you'd think some of them might even lie and say they knew him just to protect him. But none of my classmates, they're all being honest, none of them have ever seen him. No one that I ever met at Columbia. So really, in the history of these 4 years as president, only 2 people have ever stepped forward to claim they saw him at Columbia. One claimed he was his roommate, and he's a Pakistani national, and the other one claimed that he was his roommate in Occidental and has traveled over with him. They both were accepted as transfer students into Columbia. And I got to tell you, Jesse, that's a strange story because Columbia is one of the 5 best colleges in all of America, maybe in the world. Do you know how hard it is to transfer it to Columbia? And you're telling me 2 friends and roommates at Occidental, not as good as School of Columbia, both were able to get accepted as transfer students at the same time to Columbia? The whole story really doesn't make sense.
But yet you believe that Obama went to that school, but want to know why is his life so sealed and why lawyers are spending millions of dollars to keep his life private.
Yes, I've never claimed he didn't go there. I've never claimed that that's a scam or a fraud because Columbia backs up his story. I mean, all the deans at Columbia, all the executives say, we graduated a president of the United States. I can't imagine in my wildest imagination that there'd be a cover-up that would go to the top of $1 billion institution to make believe someone graduated who didn't. So let's all assume he went there. I think that brings up a different scandal, and that is, how does a guy get into Columbia when all his friends at Occidental have publicly said he was a very poor student there, one of the best colleges in America? If he was a poor student at Columbia, you assume he was a poor student because he never was in class, right?
Yeah.
And so how did he get into Harvard Law School? And it brings up the scandal of why was he never seen in any of these schools. At Occidental, I say poor student and rarely in class. At Columbia, I can testify rarely if ever in class. And then I got an email just the other day from my parents at Hannity. Someone emailed me and said, Wayne, his story even is strange at Harvard. I was his Harvard classmate, and I did see him in class. In an entire year, I saw him once in class. He never showed up again.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's so strange,
Yeah.
Reverend Jesse, that I can't explain how this guy has lived his entire life as a ghost.
That interesting that Obama got into this Ivy League, got into Ivy League schools by being a foreign exchange student.
Not only that, it's not like I'm a birther, because I have no idea where he was born, and I've never ever gotten into that issue. I'll just assume it was Honolulu, Hawaii, although I have no idea. That's mysterious too. But the fact out there that no one seems to get is he went with his mom when she got remarried to an Indonesian citizen to live in Indonesia.
Yeah.
And he had to become an Indonesian citizen himself because he went to Indonesian public schools, and there's no possible way to go to Indonesian public schools without becoming an Indonesian citizen, at least at that time.
Right.
So if he did that, then came back to America, which he did, to live with his grandparents in Hawaii, it's only natural that he would have remained an Indonesian citizen. I don't even think anyone was paying much attention to him. The poor kid had no father. His mother was in Indonesia, thousands of miles away, being raised by your grandparents. In his own book, he says he was wild and smoking pot all the time.
Yeah.
He says he was a member of the Choom gang. The whole thing makes plausible sense. Then he finds out, hey, I can use this to my advantage. I'm not going to switch back to American citizen. I can tell Columbia University, I can tell Harvard Law, I can tell Occidental, I'm an Indonesian citizen, which gives me an edge in admission to the best colleges in America.
Wow.
Allow me to re-emphasize that we are talking about the man guiding the most powerful nation in the world today. The Republican Party, FBI, CIA, federal judges, the United States military, mainstream media, conservative pundits, all remain loyally quiet about Barack Obama's mysterious past. Where's the birth certificate? Perhaps the best Obama identity controversy is his birth certificate. Article 2, Section 1, Paragraph 5 of the United States Constitution mandates, no person except a natural-born citizen or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution shall be eligible to the office of President. The purpose for this clause is to mitigate the risk that a foreign-born insurgent with few ties to America would gain the highest office and much more easily destroy her from within. It's safe to say that is exactly what has happened. The issue of Obama's place of origin is a forbidden topic, and those who break the taboo disappear, like CNN news commentator Lou Dobbs, who left CNN and was picked up by Fox News until his inappropriate questions relegated him to the graveyard of true Fox journalist Fox Business. On May 18, 2012, Dobbs told the CEO of the Republican Polling Corporation, Adam Geller, that he had been mystified by the failure of candidates like former Massachusetts Governor Willard Mitt Romney to discuss Obama's constitutional eligibility. At the time, it was all over the Drudge Report that Obama's literary agent had printed a bio stating that he was born in Kenya. In 2011, New York Democrat Congressman Edolphus Towns introduced the Presidential Records Act of Amendments of 2011, which attempted to permanently seal off Obama's records. Democrat congressmen are expected to cover for a Democrat administration, but it is support for Obama from the mainstream right that has American patriots desperate to understand why. Arizona Republican Senator John McCain approached his race against Obama in 2008 as a man wanting to lose. While the Republican base was clamoring for real opposition in the clear and present danger in Obama's candidacy, McCain was actively rebuking them.
We're scared. We're scared of an Obama presidency, and I'll tell you why. I'm concerned about someone that cohorts with domestic terrorists such as Ayers.
I have to tell you, he is a decent person and a person that you do not have to be scared as President of the United States. Now, look, I
got to ask you a question. I do not believe in, I can't trust Obama. I have read about him, and he's an Arab. He is not. No?
No, ma'am. He's He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with on fundamental issues, and that's what this campaign is all about. He's not. Thank you. Thank you.
When Cincinnati radio host Bill Cunningham warmed up the crowd before a McCain fundraiser by emphasizing Barack Obama's middle name, Hussein, McCain excoriated him. ABC News' John Berman reports Senator John McCain apologized profusely today for comments made by radio host Bill Cunningham, who was introducing him at an event in Cincinnati. Cunningham referred to the Illinois senator 3 times as Barack Hussein Obama. Jennifer Parker, ABC News. Hussein is one of the most popular names amongst Muslims worldwide. Husayn ibn Ali was the favored grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, and he died at the Battle of Karbala in 680 AD. The same way so many Christians are dying across Africa and the Middle East today. He was beheaded. In the discussion of Obama's origins, any who question the accepted narrative are immediately slandered as birthers, kooks, people who wear tinfoil hats. The biggest names in conservative talk, Rush Limbaugh, Bill O'Reilly, Mark Levine, etc., actively avoid the issue. When the watchers or listeners bring it up, they are mocked. When Fox News' Sean Hannity brought up the issue with supposed right-wing bomb thrower Ann Coulter, she handled it as if she were Eleanor Clift or Katie Couric.
All right, what do you think of Donald Trump?
Well, I think maybe I've been watching too much Charlie Sheen because Donald Trump seems perfectly sane to me. I don't know where he gets this $2 million Obama has spent to keep his birth certificate quiet. He posted his birth certificate on his webpage. I am glad that Donald Trump is bringing it up so that people who haven't really been paying attention and don't know that the American Spectator, Human Events, Fox News, every conservative outlet has already shot down this rumor, which, by the way, was started by the Hillary Clinton campaign. Now they will have a chance to find out this is Donald Trump's Pierre Salinger moment. You can't believe everything you read on the internet. Obama has produced his birth certificate. There were announcements that ran in 2 contemporaneous Hawaiian newspapers at the time. The head of the Hawaiian Medical Records has announced, I have seen the long form you all want. I don't know why the long form is considered more credible than the short form. They're both from the same office. The State Department accepts the short form, or as we call it, the birth certificate. Hawaii accepts the birth certificate, short form. It is a conspiracy theory that won't die on the internet, but every responsible conservative organization to look at it has shot it down, which is why you normally hear it being talked about exclusively on the liberal cable stations.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting point, and one of the main people demanding it be released is, interestingly, thrill up our leg, Chris Matthews. Why don't they just release it? I mean, it does raise a question, but you bring up good points, not the least of which. We're going to talk to Donald Trump on this show later this week. We'll ask him, but there's, I think, a broader, bigger issue here is that all of a sudden an issue that was on the periphery a little bit, he hits it hard, and people take note. So what is it about him that, when he speaks, people listen, and, those issues resonate?
Well, 2 things. I think the main thing is no conservative who talks on TV or has a column or has a magazine has mentioned the birth certificate issue because we've looked at it and have discounted it. You have people who want to get, hits to their websites or want to get listeners to their radio show who will keep ginning people up about this. But it is one of the rare conservative, I suppose more conservative than liberal, only because it's anti-Obama. But I don't even know that these are conservatives promoting it. As I say, this came out of the Hillary Clinton campaign. So Donald Trump is the only person who would be invited on a TV show who is pushing the birther thing. That's why it's getting attention, and of course liberals are delighted.
Well,
I think Obama is delighted.
It's not the only thing that he's talked about. He's talking about America's position in the world, our economic policy, balancing budgets. China is not America's friends. So he's a lot more substantive, but once that became an issue and he said it, then it just blew up in every interview that he does, and I'll ask him about it, but it's not the key, the most important part of our interview. All right, so if it's not going to be...
No, you'll notice who's asking him about it. It is the liberal media. They want to keep talking about it because it helps discredit all opposition to Obama. There are a lot of reasons to think Obama is a very bad president who is doing very bad things to this country. The idea that he was born in Kenya is not one of them, but it allows liberals, the mainstream media, the White House itself to keep saying, oh, all opposition to me, it's these crazy birthers. Well, no, it isn't. You haven't heard that on Fox News. You haven't heard it in Human Events and National Review or American Spectator, all of which have shot it down.
If it were proven that Barack Obama was indeed ineligible to hold the office of President of the United States, every appointment he's ever made, every piece of legislation he's ever signed, including the Affordable Health Care Act, aka Obamacare, every executive order he's ever dictated, all become nullified. The issue is the third rail of his administration, and at the very least, conservatives who believe it's a non-issue should simply state, I need to look further into it, or I have no opinion at this time. Glenn Beck called concern over Obama's constitutional ineligibility the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Ladies and gentlemen, Glenn Beck.
Hey, Peter.
Hey, Glenn.
What's up, man?
The rent.
Well,
my zipper.
I live in New York.
What do you care? What do you care?
I'm paying for your rent, I think.
I think so too. Listen, I said this to you and to your guy. I really do want to talk about the birther thing for a minute. Do you mind?
I mean, I don't have a lot to say.
What do you think of it?
I think let's just say that for academic reasons, he's not born in America.
I don't know where he was born, but
whatever.
Okay.
Let's just say, if I were the president of the United States, I would want people to bring this up. With so many things that is going on in our country, so many verifiable, so many things that are easy to prove. If I were the president, if I were holding my own birth certificate, and I'm standing there in the Oval Office, I would have somebody come in and say, Mr. President, let's just produce the birth certificate. Let's just go out, go and address this. If I were the president, I'd say, are you kidding me? No. Quiet.
But Glenn, it's just not the birth certificate. The birth certificate is this goofy thing they show on the internet, but where are his kindergarten records, Ponahou School, Occidental College, Columbia University, Columbia Thesis, Harvard Law School,
Peter,
adoption records, passport records? Does that mean anything to you at all, that those things are missing?
Yeah, but I don't think it's a winnable argument.
Oh, sure it is.
By any stretch of the imagination.
Of course it's winnable.
I haven't done any, I haven't looked into it at all, except just kind of glanced at it, because there's no way to win that.
Well, sure there is. I mean, the Constitution is very clear.
Peter, I understand that. Right. The Constitution also doesn't include health care.
Well, no, but let's take them one at a time. The Constitution is clear on who can be president. It isn't clear about health care. You're right. It just promises life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When you can, again, health care is the worst thing in the world that could happen. But the second thing is, why? I mean, this guy, do you believe that this guy, he tells, and I wanted to read this to you. I went back in my notes to get ready to speak to you. I got a speech that he made in 2009 to students. Remember, there's a big thing of him addressing kids on television. This is from the speech. I get it. I know what it's like. My father left my family when I was 2 years of age. I was raised by a single mother. You know that's not true. You know his mother went to Seattle when he was less than 2 weeks of age and stayed there, and the parents were not married and the rest of that stuff. Why would he continue to say something like that in the speech to American school children when, Glenn, it's not true?
Peter.
No, Glenn, I'm a serious question.
I'll give you a serious answer.
All right.
Tell me the things that this man says that are true.
No, let's stay on focus here for a second. Why would he say that when we know for a fact that
tell me what this man has said that is a correct representation. I mean,
that's not the answer. That's not an answer. That's answering.
Here's the answer that I'm going to give you.
All right.
That's the answer I'm going to give you. I'm not focused on this. I'm focused on things that are happening right now.
In spite of this hedge of protection that has been set up around Obama, Americans still began to ask questions, and it forced the administration to respond. On April 27th of 2011, WhiteHouse.gov released Barack Obama's official long-form birth certificate. 4 days later, the media cycle came to a screeching halt and careened off into a new direction when the Obama administration announced, "We got bin Laden." It was as if the event were a trump card just waiting to be played. Rather than journalists staying calm and maintaining the issue, they chastened anyone not caught up in the patriotic euphoria, something that looked forced and surreal coming from the hard left of the political spectrum. Last Wednesday, President Obama concluded his remarks about the release of his birth certificate by chiding his critics and the press with words that now seem far more ominous after the United States raid that killed Osama bin Laden. "We do not have time for this kind of silliness," Mr. Obama said. "We've got better stuff to do. I've got better stuff to do. We've got big problems to solve, and I'm confident we can solve them, but we're going to have to focus on them, not on this." Michael Shear, The New York Times.
As many of you have been briefed, we provided additional information today about the site of my birth. Now, this issue has been going on for two and a half years now. I think it started during the campaign. And I have to say that over the last 2.5 years, I have watched with bemusement. I've been puzzled at the degree to which this thing just kept on going. We've had every official in Hawaii, Democrat and Republican, every news outlet that has investigated this, confirm that, yes, in fact, I was born in Hawaii, August 4th, 1961, in Kapiolani Hospital. We've posted the certification that is given by the state of Hawaii on the internet for everybody to see. People have provided affidavits that they, in fact, have seen this birth certificate, and yet this thing just keeps on going. Now, normally, I would not comment on something like this because obviously there's a lot of stuff swirling in the press at any given day, and I've got other things to do. But 2 weeks ago, when the Republican House had put forward a budget that will have huge consequences potentially to the country, and when I gave a speech about my budget and how I felt that we needed to invest in education and infrastructure and making sure that we had a strong safety net for our seniors, even as we were closing the deficit, during that entire week, the dominant news story wasn't about these huge monumental choices that we're going to have to make as a nation. It was about my birth certificate. And that was true on most of the news outlets that were represented here. And so I just want to make a larger point here. We've got some enormous challenges out there.
Independent journalists soon found more than a few reasons to be concerned about the announcement. In 2007, former Pakistani Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto told David Frost on his program Frost Around the World that bin Laden was already dead.
There was one report that said that you had arranged to send President Musharraf a letter to be sent in the event of your death by assassination, urging him to investigate certain individuals in his government. Is that true?
Yes, it is true that I wrote to General Musharraf. I received information from General Musharraf that a friendly country had passed on to them the information that I could be attacked by a gang from the Afghan warlord Baitullah Masood, or by Hamza bin Laden, the son of Osama bin Laden, or by the Pakistani Taliban in Islamabad, or by a group in Karachi. So I sent back a letter saying that while these groups may be used, I thought it was more important to go after the people who supported them, who organized them, who could possibly be the financiers or the organizers of the finance for those groups. And I named 3 individuals who I thought were their sympathizers. Now I understand that I could be wrong and my suspicions could be misplaced. But these are the people that I suspect want to stop the restoration of democracy. They want to stop my return because they know in 1993, when Pakistan was on the brink of being declared a terrorist state, I stopped the rise of terrorism, and they know that I can do it again. So I feel that these are the forces that really want to stop not just me, but the democratic process and the will of the people from triumphing.
And in terms of these 3 people that you mentioned, were they members of or associated with the government?
Yes, well, one of them is a very key figure in security. He's a former military officer. He is someone that has had dealings with Jaish-e-Mohammed, one of the banned groups, with Maulana Azhar, who was in an Indian jail for decapitating 3 British tourists and 3 American tourists. And he also had dealings with Omar Sheikh, the man who murdered Osama bin Laden. Now, I know that having dealings with people does not necessarily mean direct evidence, but I also know that internal security has totally collapsed in Pakistan.
Russia's state news agency Pravda was incredulous that Frost obliviously rolled over the announcement without follow-up. Bhutto herself quickly fell victim to assassination after attending an event for the Pakistani People's Party in late December of that same year. Another Russian source, Russia Today, interviewed former NSA analyst turned independent journalist Wayne Madsen, who asserted that Bhutto's death was a hit initiated by the CIA. The SEAL team that conducted the raid to get bin Laden executed him on sight, although he was surrounded only by his wife, depending on which official story you read. Americans were first told that the SEALs fought their way through withering fire from Al-Qaeda to get to where bin Laden was hiding. This was later retracted. It turned out that there was no firefight. The body of whomever it was that the SEALs shot on sight was brought back to the USS Carl Vinson, where it was dumped into the ocean without a single sailor witnessing the event. In 2012, Navy SEAL Matt Bissonnette claimed in his book No Easy Day that he shot bin Laden. 2 years later, Navy SEAL Rob O'Neill would claim he shot bin Laden.
The mystery of which American Special Forces operator, which Navy SEAL killed Osama bin Laden may be a mystery no more. A former Navy SEAL has stepped forward to take the credit, but his story doesn't exactly line up with one told by one of his colleagues. And the Navy tonight is incensed that either man is talking at all, traditionally something Special Forces do not do. Our report from NBC's Cynthia McFadden.
SEAL Team 6, the elite Navy unit that took down Osama bin Laden, has been glorified in films like Zero Dark 30. But today, 3 years later, the team is embroiled in a war of its own, with 2 former SEALs breaking their code of silence, each telling a different version of the historic event.
I'm not telling any secrets and I'm not breaking any rules, but we're going to have a lot of fun.
Robert O'Neill has been on the motivational speaking circuit.
You don't need a plan to execute, you just execute.
This afternoon, he identified himself in the Washington Post as the man who killed Osama bin Laden. Another team member, Matt Bissonnette, wrote a book in which he described it somewhat differently, with 3 commandos firing shots that hit bin Laden. He asked us not to show his face.
2 different people telling 2 different stories and for 2 different reasons.
The men have divided the historically secretive SEAL community, with some saying both are profiting off the backs of all the team members. Last week, the SEAL's top commander wrote an open letter saying, "We do not abide willful or selfish disregard for our core values in return for public notoriety and financial gain," and warned of legal consequences for those who place our teammates at risk.
If classified information is accidentally released to the world, SEALs can get killed. Innocent people can get killed. Other American military people can get killed. That's what this is all about.
As for O'Neill and Bissonnette, they do agree on one thing. They say they have the right to speak out.
But you signed a non-disclosure agreement to not talk about any mission, right?
Yes, yeah.
Bissonnette now admits that he should have had his book cleared by superiors. He says he got bad legal advice and is now suing his former lawyer. He's under criminal investigation by the Department of Justice for potentially leaking classified secrets, which he denies doing.
Is it scary? Sure. The unknown's always scary.
Bissonnette and O'Neill were but 2 of the 24 Americans on the Osama bin Laden mission. A former senior SEAL Team 6 leader who knows both men told NBC he was bitterly disappointed in them. What they've done is dishonorable, he said. All of this has just been done for personal gain. Brian?
O'Neill now says his life is in danger. Is America being betrayed and misinformed by even her Special Forces operators? The supposed mastermind behind the 9/11 attacks, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, was waterboarded no fewer than 183 times to break him. He was Osama bin Laden's lieutenant. Bin Laden himself can rightly be called the greatest intelligence asset of the entire war on terror, yet he was shot on sight and dumped in the ocean. Photos released which purportedly showed the dead terrorist had to be retracted when it was proven that they were faked. A Freedom of Information request demanding to see the real photos was denied by a federal judge. The sensational White House Situation Room photo featuring National Security Advisor, now Director of the CIA, John Brennan, Barack Obama, then Secretary of Defense Robert Gates, a Bush appointee, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Admiral Mike Mullins, and Vice President Joe Biden, along with an aghast Hillary Clinton, was also admitted to be staged. The media proclaimed the suspenseful photo depicted America's leaders watching every step the SEALs made, but it was later disclosed there was no live feed of the raid. A closer look. The Obama long-form birth certificate released by the White House has itself proven to be less than authentic. A smiley face in an original signature, a stamp spelling error, identical typewriter splats proving digital replication, multiple layers that peel away from the PDF. It is a document that appears to have been fabricated by an amateur. Again, this is a critical identification concerning the man sitting in the White House. The birth certificate was illegally declared a forgery by one of the most famous jurisdictions in the country, Maricopa County, Arizona Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Yet, to date, no action has been taken. Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Sarah Palin, Allen West, not a single Republican figure will even broach the subject. Even more disturbing than his birth certificate is what you find when you peel back the layers of Barack Obama's life. But to do that, we need some more background. Barack Obama's mystery religion. Most Americans don't know that Barack Obama is actually quite popular amongst Catholics. Although many American Catholics lean to the right on the political spectrum, Roman Catholicism is a worldwide religion with 1.2 billion adherents. Most of them lean quite decidedly to the left. Does church policy follow popular sentiment or lead it? In 2008, American Catholics helped put Barack Obama in office, and many in the Catholic conservative minority, like author, speaker, and founder of the Eagle Forum, Phyllis Schlafly, were not pleased. Catholics have been giving overwhelmingly to leftist and even communist organizations like ACORN and the Campaign for Human Development. Many have been duped into believing they're helping the poor. The more important question is, why is Catholic leadership behind such a subversive, hard-left agenda? Barack Obama's rhetoric has been pricking the ears of liberal Catholics, some of whom are saying, he sounds just like I do. Many will be surprised to know that Obama's communist roots have Catholic origins. As Andrew Higgins of the Washington Post noted, while much ado is made of Obama's 1 year at a Muslim madrasa, the rest of his time in Indonesia was spent under Catholic tutelage. Former NSA analyst turned whistleblower and investigative journalist Wayne Madsen has pieced together extensive clues that run from Barack Obama through his apparent mother and beyond his grandparents. At every step of the way, they are intertwined with the Communist Party. Madsen considered this infiltration by CIA assets, but Obama is clearly a hard-left ideologue. It is the United States which has suffered at his hands, not any communist insurgency he has belonged to. How can the CIA work so well with communists? Obama's own work in 1983 for Business International Corporation, a CIA front that conducted seminars with the world's most powerful leaders and used journalists as agents abroad, dovetails with CIA espionage activities conducted by his mother, Stanley Ann Dunham, in 1960s post-coup Indonesia on behalf of a number of CIA front operations, including the East-West Center at the University of Hawaii, the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, and the Ford Foundation. Dunham met and married Lolo Sotero, Obama's stepfather, at the East-West Center in 1965. Sotero was recalled to Indonesia in 1965 to serve as a senior army officer and assist General Suharto and the CIA in the bloody overthrow of President Sukarno. Barack Obama Sr., who met Dunham in 1959 in a Russian language class at the University of Hawaii, had been part of what was described as an airlift of 280 East African students to the United States to attend various colleges. Lolo Sotero, who Dunham married in March 1965, departed Hawaii for Indonesia on July 20th, 1965, some 3 months prior to the CIA's coup against Indonesian President Sukarno. Many Javanese have only one name. Sotero, who served General Suharto, also only one name, as an Army colonel, was clearly called back from the CIA-connected East-West Center to assist in the coup against Sukarno, one that would eventually cost the lives of some 1 million Indonesian citizens. In 1967, after arriving in Indonesia with Obama Jr., Dunham began teaching English at the American Embassy in Jakarta, which also housed one of the largest CIA stations in Asia and had significant satellite stations in Surabaya in eastern Java and Medan on Sumatra. In fact, Obama's mother was teaching English for the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, which was a major cover for CIA activities in Indonesia and throughout Southeast Asia, especially in Laos, South Vietnam, and Thailand, the Madsen report. Madsen went on in his expose to remark how Obama's mother, Stanley Ann Dunham, was helpful to both the Soviet Union and the One World Agenda Ford Foundation. Obama's grandmother, Madeline Dunham, was connected to the CIA as first female vice president at the Bank of Hawaii in Honolulu, a facility much used by the Central Intelligence Agency. Madeline Dunham died just before Obama was elected president in early November 2008. William Bloom, writing for the blog of FBI whistleblower Sybil Edmonds, also noted Obama's connection to the CIA through Business International. Questions arise regarding Stanley Ann Dunham and the supposed timeline of her giving birth to Obama. A discrepancy exists due to her being in Seattle, Washington, attending the university there and not in Honolulu, Hawaii, in August of 1961. Michael Shrimpton, a British barrister with intelligence credentials, is claiming that the CIA has both photographic and DNA proof that Stanley Ann Dunham isn't Barack Obama's biological mother. But even if Dunham is Obama's biological mother, there's an excellent chance that his real father was communist pet pornographer Frank Marshall Davis. Documentary filmmaker Joel Gilbert thinks he has the evidence to include sordid pictures of young Anne posing nude and in dominatrix-style outfits for Davis.
When Mom graduated high school in June of 1960, she was planning on attending the University of Washington in Seattle, along with her large group of teenage friends. She was devastated when Gramps announced the move to Hawaii. He tore her away from her teenage world to an island thousands of miles out in the Pacific Ocean. Hawaii was like a different planet for a kid from Seattle. Mom enrolled at the University of Hawaii, taking only 2 classes in protest. She was miserable and alone, and even worse, an outsider. Whites were just 1/4 of the population. Mom was desperate for friends and seeking revenge for what Gramps had done to her. An interesting black man had visited Gramps at their apartment. He seemed cool. He was a poet and knew all about jazz music. Mom began skipping class, sneaking over to Frank Marshall Davis's house to hang out.
Your lips, sweeter than old wine. Your eyes, more beautiful than April rainbows. I do not love you for just your body.
He read her poetry. He played jazz records for her and showed her his nude photo collection. At some point, she agreed to pose. These photos were taken a few weeks before Christmas 1960, when Mom was about 5 weeks pregnant with Mate. There's no mistaking. This is my mom. The long Dunham chin, the petite mouth, the arched eyebrows, the earlobes, the thin upturned nose. Frank then sold the photos to men's mail-order catalogs. And sometimes Frank had Mom pose with other women. Here, Mom is sitting on the same couch as Frank in this 1948 interview. Mom's recent tan line is visible. And she's wearing Chicago-style high heels belonging to Frank's wife.
Barry's Catholic mentor. Jimmy Carter's national security advisor was Zbigniew Brzezinski. Both Brzezinski and his son Mark are close Obama advisors. Daughter Mika has an equally high-profile job working as a host at the hard-left media outlet MSNBC. Brzezinski was teaching at Columbia when Obama was supposedly attending. Brzezinski is literally the man behind America's foremost Islamic enemy, Al-Qaeda, and its former frontman, Osama bin Laden. Brzezinski is a Catholic Pole of strong passions. He hates Russia almost as much as he adores Rome.
Joining us now for some analysis is Webster Griffin Tarpley, as promised on Monday. Welcome back, my friend.
Thank you, Jeff. So let me just sum up the case. Zbigniew Brzezinski, Carter's national security director, who started the Afghan war. We can talk about this in a minute.
Right.
His son, Mark Brzezinski. These two are both listed as official top foreign policy directors of the Obama campaign. Of course, Obama knows nothing about foreign policy, no knowledge, no experience, so he's going to rely on Zbigniew for the general ideas and Mark. And Zbignew's new book, The Second Chance, is in effect a scenario for the Obama campaign. Let me just say, we had a candidate who came forward and said, I have no foreign policy knowledge or experience, but I will surround myself with the best advisors, who has now chosen this Brzezinski machine, which has if anything, a worse track record on these things, as we can go into. And he says, I'll surround myself with these wonderful advisors. And it turns out that this group has a fantasy of world domination through remaking the world, changing the world, suspending corruption, wiping out sin, all of these things. Zbigniew Brzezinski is a direct link of the Obama campaign to terrorism. I hope we've established that Zbigniew Brzezinski is the guru of the entire campaign. In other words, he dominates foreign policy, but he dominates the entire profile. And the central feature is there's a global political awakening, and people want some intangible quality
there you go.
that Obama might be able to give them. And so we've got Zbigniew Brzezinski officially listed as foreign policy advisor. He's really the dominant personality of the entire affair. Zbigniew Brzezinski, you see, goes very far. He's very public in his support of these terrorists because he's a reactionary, almost a neo-fascist, I guess you'd have to say, and he is a sworn enemy. In other words, his entire life is devoted to this consuming hatred of Russia. How ironic that this should lurk behind those wonderful messianic utopian plans for world reconciliation and world reform that we seem to be hearing from Obama. So I think just this big finger in the terrorist world by Brzezinski, and therefore by the Obama campaign, ought to rule out any support. Now there is this wonderful interview. It's about 10 years old, 10 years ago next week, I guess, in the French magazine Nouvel Observateur. And this is sort of left liberal French magazine. The interesting thing is the following. Brzezinski starts off by saying, most people think, the official version of history, he says, that the CIA intervention into Afghanistan in support of the Mujahideen started after the Soviets invaded Afghanistan, which was Christmas 1979, Christmas Eve. But he says, no, that's not the reality. The reality, secretly guarded until now, is completely different. It was on July 3rd, 1979, so practically 6 months before the Russian invasion, that President Carter signed the first directive for secret aid to the Mujahideen, the anti-Soviet forces in Afghanistan. On that day, I wrote a note to Carter in which I explained to him that in my opinion this aid was going to cause a Soviet military intervention. That is to say, start a war and create a world strategic emergency. Then the Nouvelle Observateur asks Zbigniew Brzezinski, but despite the risk, you supported this covert action. Of course, he likes covert action. He just tried one in New Hampshire. Did you desire the Soviet entry into the war? Did you try to provoke it? He says, well, I wouldn't put it quite that way. We knowingly increased the probability that they would. So he's double talking. Now, the question, the Soviets claimed at the time that they went into Afghanistan to stop the U.S. and the CIA from taking over, and people didn't believe them. But now you're saying that the Soviets were right. They were telling the truth. You don't regret anything today? Now listen to this. Brzezinski says, regret what? That secret operation was an excellent idea. It had the effect of drawing the Russians into the Afghan trap, and you want me to regret it? The day that the Soviets officially crossed the border, I wrote to President Carter, we now have the opportunity of giving the USSR its Vietnam War. For 10 years, Moscow had to carry on a war which was unsupportable by the government. This was a conflict that brought about the demoralization and the breakup of the Soviet Empire. So in effect, he's saying 1 million Afghan dead, 2 to 3 million driven out of the country, 2 or 3 million displaced refugees within the country, 15, 20,000 Soviet dead. This doesn't matter. This was a brilliant success of geopolitics. And they ask him, don't you regret that you supported these Islamic fundamentalists, that you gave them weapons, and you created all these terrorists? Now again, this is operating obviously within the realm of what was known in 1998. And he says, Brzezinski, what is the most important thing in the history of the world? The Taliban or the collapse of the Soviet Empire? Some stirred up Muslims or the liberation of Central Europe and the end of the Cold War? And they say then, Nouvelle Observateur, what do you mean stirred up Muslims? We have all said that Islamic fundamentalism is a danger, is a world menace today. Brzezinski, nonsense. Now, you have to remember that Islamic fundamentalism in the present form is largely a creation of Brzezinski himself. He attempted to foment the Khomeini revolution in Iran, which took place during his tenure at the NSC.
Right.
He was an active supporter of the overthrow of the Shah and the coming of Khomeini for reasons that for him had less to do with Iran and even with the oil than it had to do with the idea of unleashing this bacillus of Islamic fundamentalism into the soft underbelly of the Soviet Union, the 5 Central Asian republics, Azerbaijan, and the other Muslim populations of the USSR. So for him, that was the big thing. And I assure you, we could do a whole program on this. Brzezinski called it the arc of crisis. He said all the way from Turkey over to Burma, I guess, the entire southern littoral of the littoral of the Indian Ocean and the Arabian
Muslim
Sea,
world, which also extends, of course, into Western China.
And into Indonesia. I mean, all of this was part of the arc of crisis for him. But in particular, he's targeting also the southern borders of the then Soviet Union.
Right.
Now, I think what you have to get out of that is that Brzezinski is willing to sacrifice any interest. He's willing to do anything: war, terrorism, adventurism, geopolitics, the betrayal of allies. There's no interest that he's not prepared to sacrifice. So this would indicate, as soon as you had an Obama administration with Zbigniew Brzezinski calling the shots, you would be on a confrontation course with Moscow. But I think if we can actually get some content into the Democratic race over this issue of Brzezinski and war with Russia and geopolitics in general, and somehow also to direct the attention of these naive voters, is if you can't tell what the candidate is thinking, look at his advisors, and you will get a pretty good idea.
Well, unfortunately, the average American voter doesn't look beyond what they see on the television.
Although Brzezinski received his higher education at McGill and Harvard, the Jesuits had him first through Loyola High School in Montreal. A connection that is more likely is that Obama was working with Brzezinski and future CIA Director John Brennan on jihad and opium while visiting Pakistan in the 1980s. Brzezinski had, I'm sure still has, a direct line to the Vatican. Karol Joseph Wojtyla. Pope John Paul II was his personal friend. Aleksandra Ziolkowska-Boehm. From my recollections of a conversation I had with your father and the commentary in your own book, Power and Principle, I know of your close and warm contacts with Pope John Paul II. How would you define the role of the Pope in Catholicism in the world after over 10 years of his pontificate? Brzezinski. To me, Pope John Paul II is the first true spiritual and religious leader on a global scale in the history of mankind. Up until now, all religious leaders appealed to a limited audience, both theologically and geographically. John Paul II overcomes these limitations not only by effectively and skillfully using the mass media, but also by the power of his personality and deep spirituality. At the same time, as far as the Catholic faith is concerned, the Pope strives to strengthen and rebuild the Church, which has gone somewhat astray after the post-Vatican II reformatory zeal. The way I see it, the Pope wants to ensure that the Church remains the guardian of faith while preventing ecumenism from degenerating into indifference. A conversation with Zbigniew Brzezinski. The roots are Polish. John Paul II didn't always see eye to eye with the Society of Jesus, but things smoothed out after they tried repeatedly to kill him.